I'm sure you've been dying to know what this year's theme is, so here we go. This year, for 2021, the theme is Joined Together.
Welcome to this year's Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam, where for the next 48 hours straight, I'll be throwing away any good life habits I've made and sitting in a dark room programming. So nothing out of the ordinary there, although this time I am not alone, which is arguably the weirdest part. Benbonk and a good friend of his, Gizmote, will be joining me in this excruciating pain we call fun. If you have been living under a rock, Game Jam is where a bunch of sweaty nerds sit on their computers for a designated time frame, creating an entire game from scratch with a specific theme. Did you get it? Probably not. Didn't ask. Don't care. Let's get into it. As you could probably tell from the first few moments, the theme was joined together, so Benbonk, Gizmo, and I all hopped into a call and started brainstorming some ideas that would dictate if I would either smash my head into a wall or enjoy the next 48 hours doing the programming. Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned this. I was in charge of doing almost all of the programming. Benbonk created all the art and helped me out wherever I needed it, and Gizmo did all the music and sound effects. So now that you have all the information you need to know, let's get back into this. So the first few ideas I had in mind probably would have got this video age restricted, but thankfully Gizmo and Ben did most of the carrying while I sat there. So after we all pitched in some ideas, we agreed on a central genre, which was a 2D top-down shooter. So quite original if I say so myself. Anyways, we continued to throw around some ideas for the main mechanic that would fit the theme of joined together, and we all kept landing back at the same spot. With a few twists and turns, we landed on an idea of enemies combining with other dead enemies to become stronger, but the player would have the option to be able to clean up those dead bodies to avoid the enemies getting stronger. So once getting the idea and agreeing upon it, we all hopped out of the call and I went to take a small break before soaking my gamer chair in sweat and tears for the next 48 hours, which is just why'd I say that was such a disgusting visual? I am so sorry. But finally, I was ready to start tackling this project after my break, and the first thing I had to do was the movement. With no hard troubles there, bada bang bada boom, we got our trusty default Unity square moving and grooving. Moving on, you see what I did there? Since we aren't making a top-down platformer, I'm not even sure how that one would work. We need some gunplay. This wasn't too difficult, but being the overscoper I am, I went ahead and overscoped this entire system and made it fully modular for no reason. With that system in place and our little weapon implemented and aiming towards our crosshair, it's time to get into the kitchen and start whipping up what America is known for, and that is so let's get cooking. Here you go, sir. This is the gun mechanics for our game. Where's the lamb sauce? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not sure how the fish is raw. I didn't even give you fish. What? I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. I'll fix it.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem, sir. Phew. I almost didn't make it out there alive, but anyways, we got our Gordon Ramsay certified gunplay done with only our entire self-confidence destroyed as a chef. I might have stumbled into the wrong room, but
5 hours later,
we got our idea solidified, movement and gunplay working, so I would say we're in a pretty good place. So for the remaining 44 hours, I was thinking it would be a perfect waste of time to start adding in game juice when I probably will have to redo the entire system later on. I started on a knockback system that would knock the player back a bit every single time he got shot, and somehow I managed to get it working. I even told myself I wasn't happy with how it was working, so I already knew I was going to have to throw it out. With a hacked knockback system in, we need something to shoot at, so good old Unity default square sprite to the rescue. We got a red square to chase the player, so that didn't take too much time. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I got a super simple damage script working, but that's kind of boring to talk about because it's literally like bullet hits target goes ooh candy and takes some damage. But now it's time to get one of the main mechanics working, and that's the player eating up, cleaning up the enemy's dead body. Basically, this was super simple. The player walks over to the corpse, enemy goes, "Oh no, not my booty." The player goes, "Yum yum 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 yum," for a few seconds, and the enemy goes pop out of existence. So that's where I left off for day 1. I got the movement, shooting, basic enemy pathfinding, and scooping up fainted enemies. YouTube, please don't demonetize me. I love you guys. They're fainted, they're not dead. So I think we're in a pretty good spot for the first day. So waking up on day 2, I had a short depression whenever I saw that Ben absolutely just murdered my default square and put in his own sexy art, and of course it came with his signature green color palette. Although I was pretty shook to see my boy, the blue square, take such a fat L. The art just made the game feel like, well, a game and something that I couldn't do, so that's always a huge plus. But moving on, today I had the majority of the mechanics to finish up because I knew that today would be my last full day, since tomorrow I have a few things I have to do in the morning, so I won't have as much time. So first things first, I got the enemies to decide whether to go for a fallen friend or the player. I basically did this with some distance math, so call me Mr. Einstein if you will. With the enemies choosing their priorities quite well, the next logical step was to get these enemies and turn them into cannibals, which is completely logical. Don't even question my thought process. The hardest part was actually getting it so only one enemy would go to one corpse, because if we didn't add this limiter, it would look like a girl that accidentally stepped foot in a Comic-Con convention, which is something that I don't think any of us want. Now that the enemies go to the corpse, it's time to get them to show a physical upgrade. I struggled a bit on how to implement this since each upgrade had its own sprite and animations, but the way I decided to go about it was to have each enemy hold 3 different enemies inside of it, which would be their levels, and just enable and disable that enemy whenever we needed to show one at a certain time. This way each could have their own animations and sprite. Around this time, Gizmo finished up his music track and got some sound effects ready for the game, and since Benbonk felt a bit burnt out on the art at that moment, he went in and added a few key elements like the audio system to implement Gizmote's music and sound effects, which you just don't understand the impact that sound has in your game until it's in. Then playing the game without sound feels weird. But in addition to that, Ben also got a lot of other key features in since I was busy fixing up a few bugs. After getting those bugs in and holding in tears, which is never a new experience for me, it was time to add in some new and interesting enemies. The first one that I started to work on was a projectile enemy. Ben already had a sprite in and ready to go, so it was just a matter of getting it in. I had 2 ideas for how this enemy would go about working. Either the projectiles would fly in a straight path, like I am some noob at programming, or I'd make them a homing projectile system. So long story short, I found myself on the Brackies YouTube channel desperately looking to how to make projectiles homing, and thankfully I found one and it just saved the day. So after planning out how this enemy would work, I did some quick refactoring to make it easy to add in new enemies, and boom, after a bit of time, we got the projectile enemy in, and it would just shoot more projectiles out of more areas as the enemy upgrades and gets bigger. So while I finished up adding the transitions to the enemies, Ben hit me up with some bugs he ran into, which is never a good sign, especially when it's 11 PM the night before the deadline. So strapping myself in, I knew it was going to be one tireless and long night. After getting the bugs all sorted, I started on the 3rd and final enemy for this game jam. Basically, he would be a melee enemy that would just walk a bit slower and take a lot more bullets to kill, which is saying something because these enemies are like literal bullet sponges. Ben already imported the 3 levels for this enemy, which just get bigger and fatter, and after definitely not just replacing the sprites with the normal melee enemy with this guy, he was in and ready to kill the player. Once the big bad guy was all finished up, I started realizing some major game breaking bugs with literally the main mechanic of the game, which is the upgrade system. There were these really odd times that enemies would just straight up go blind and not pick up a corpse even if the player wasn't close to it, and other small annoying bugs. So me, being fueled by straight caffeine, decided it was a completely great idea to to scrap that entire system and overhaul and refactor the entire thing. So after about an hour of refactoring and playtesting, I thought I fixed all of the bugs, and while I was playtesting, I realized that there wasn't really an incentive for the player to go around and pick up corpses, so that's when I decided to add in a quick ammo system where the only way to get more ammo would be to kill and collect corpses. This added another dimension to the game and hopefully would fix the problem without having to refactor the entire game. So taking a few steps back that night, you guys remember that knockback system? Well, I actually had to scrap it quite quickly after realizing it did not work for both the player and the enemy. So either the player would be knocked back from shooting or the enemy would be knocked back from getting hit, and it was just never, ever both at the same time. So knowing I would have no time in the morning, I decided to take a deep breath, get some more caffeine, and work until I got the system perfect. About an hour later, and it was around 2 a.m. when I finished, with more caffeine in my system than a college student writing a 10-page essay that they forgot about, I got the knockback system working well enough that there didn't seem to be any problems. Going to bed that night, I was quite happy with the progress I made, but you can imagine the absolute shock I had when I woke up to Ben saying that there was still a lot of issues left in the game. Thankfully, Ben was able to use some of his wizard programming skills, and with some back and forth, we were able to get all of the bugs we noticed fixed. With 2 minutes and 43 seconds left in the jam, we were able to submit our game and finally take that long awaited deep breath. If you guys want to try out our game, there is a link in the description below. Go try it out and vote for it before the deadline. It was a super fun and exciting game jam, and with some solid teammates for this jam, I am extremely happy with how this game turned out. So thank you to Benbonk and Gizmote for joining together for this jam, and with that all being said, thank you for watching and goodbye.